Why is Mr. Netanyahu calling for a pardon?
Well, first, it's worth noting that he was one of the last politicians to make a statement here. Many even made statements before the verdict was reached, saying that regardless of what happens, if he's convicted, he should be pardoned immediately. Most of those were right-wing politicians here, but some were not. Some were left-wing politicians. So the calls for a pardon have come from across the political spectrum. Again, Netanyahu was one of the last to make a statement, and he issued it on Facebook. It was very delicately worded, and at the end he said, "I favor pardoning the soldier." For Netanyahu, it was a very difficult position for him to be in. Any statement he makes, in a sense, he loses. If he backs the soldier, as he did, it looks like he's going against military leadership, who have clearly said no soldier is above Israel's military code of ethics. Whereas if he backs the military leadership, it looks like he's going against the soldier, which is supported by many of his voters. In the end, he chose to back the soldier. He asked for a pardon. That process it doesn't have to be a quick process. It may take quite some time. The president of Israel, who's the only one who can grant a pardon, has simply said he'll consider all the factors. After this process continues a little bit, there should be a sentencing in a few weeks.
Yeah, but asking for that pardon, a very high-profile protester from the prime minister. And Oren, it was an online video that brought this shooting incident to light. Who took the video, and is the filmmaker getting caught up in all the tension as well?
We talked to Ahmad Abu Shamsia back when this happened. This is last March, shortly after we went out to Tel Rumeida in the largely Palestinian city of Hebron and interviewed him. And even then he was getting threats against his life, threats of violence against him. He says, when we spoke to him earlier today, he says they've gotten worse since the verdict, since Elo Ghazalia, the soldier here, was convicted of both manslaughter and improper conduct. The video was a critical part of this. Many feel that there wouldn't have been a trial, there wouldn't have been any big issue about this without this home video shot by this Palestinian activist that was then put out by B'Tselem, a left-leaning human rights organization here. And that is why his role in this is so critical. He said he's gotten death threats in the past, but he says they've gotten worse in the last 24 hours or so since the verdict came down.
Yeah, so there's a lot of anger being directed at this activist filmmaker, of course, at this verdict as well. Angry protests across Israel, and yet praise from human rights groups. What are they saying about the court's decision?
Well, human rights groups have long criticized the Israeli military. They say the military has not held its own soldiers accountable for violence against Palestinians. Many of them praise the verdict, saying this is a step in the right direction, but also saying this is the exception to the rule. Their criticism stands, they say, because it's still the Israeli military has only held this one soldier. Again, the exception to the rule instead of what the military does regularly. So the praise did come for the guilty verdict here. The pardon, if it comes, if it happens, could change that. In fact, it can turn this entire story on its head, as the military leadership and the Minister of Defense have said, look, you have to respect not only the military code of ethics here, but also the verdict from a three-judge panel, a military panel here.